Anbar. I'm a pediatric pulmonologist. I work at the SUNY Upstate Medical University in Syracuse.
To begin with, could you tell us how you were first introduced to hypnosis?
Well, I was practicing pediatric pulmonology back about 10, 11 years ago when a patient was referred to me, and he had very bad food allergies. And he had developed a pneumothorax, which is a blowout of his lung, because he had eaten a milk product to which he was allergic. He required intubation, and as a complication of the intubation, he developed the lung blowout. And he had a chest tube placed in his chest, and when they took the chest tube out, the lung collapsed again. So they put the chest tube back in and sent him to me. And I met him, and we had instant rapport, although I didn't know much about rapport at the time. And I told him, well, we'll have to take the chest tube out, and if the lung collapses again, we'll have to do surgery. So we took the chest tube out, and the lung did not collapse, and we sent him home. A week later, his mother calls me, and she says he has terrible pain at his chest tube site, and he can't walk. And she was worried that he might have suffered brain damage as a result of the resuscitation process, because when he was 7 years old, he had a similar episode, did suffer brain damage, and then an anaphylaxis episode, and then needed 6 months of rehabilitation. So I thought to myself, did his pneumothorax come back? And I said, is he having trouble breathing? And she said, no. So I said, how come you're calling me? She said, I don't know anybody else to call. I said, well, I know little about pain and even less about people who can't walk, but I can certainly arrange for you to be admitted to the hospital. So I admitted him. He was admitted to the neurologist service. The next day I went by and said, just to say hello. I called it a social rounds. Last time I used that word, social rounds. And so I came into his room, and he was sitting at his bedside, and he was literally shaking. And he looked upset. I used my astute powers of clinical observation and said, you look upset. And he said, yes, I am. I said, what's the matter? He says, nobody can tell me what's wrong with me. I've had a brain scan. I've had a nerve conduction study where they poke needles into my arms, and nobody can tell me what's wrong with me. I'm sick and tired of being sick. I want to get out of here. So I sat in front of him, took hold of his hands to steady them, and told him to calm down. And so I noticed that as I was telling him to calm down, he did. And I said, you'll be fine. I was just reassuring him. You'll be able to walk again, maybe next week, maybe tomorrow, maybe today. And every time I suggested something, he said, yes. Would you like to walk now? Yes. And within about 10 minutes, he was walking up and down the hall. Took him back to the bedside, or back to bed. I turned to my nurse. I said, what just happened here? Was this faith healing? The neurologist, who should have been able to tell me what he had, said she didn't know, and I certainly didn't know. I did not recognize it as a conversion disorder, because I was just a pulmonologist. And I remember saying, if this could be bottled, it'd be worth something. But since I didn't know what it was, I filed it away as a curiosity. I followed this young man for his asthma for the next year. He came in about a year later, and he said, lately, when I've been smelling cheeseburgers, I've been developing asthma attacks. I thought that was a weird symptom, but he's very allergic to milk, and twice in his life he almost died from exposure to a milk product. So I said, well, maybe a milk molecule is going through the air and that's affecting his breathing. So I told him, go see your allergist. So, but then I said, remember last year you couldn't walk, and you were able to walk after we talked? He says, well, this is different. This is my asthma. I know my asthma. I said, that's okay, but do me a favor. Close your eyes and imagine eating a cheeseburger, which is something he could never do in real life. So he closed his eyes, and within seconds, he's having trouble breathing. His nose is flaring. It looks like he's wheezing. And the first thought that crossed into my mind is, oh no, he's going to have anaphylaxis. So I said, stop it. So he did. That's not a great way to stop an induction. But anyway, I said, you're putting me on. No, he said, I couldn't breathe. That was my asthma. I said, whoa, that's weird. And I knew enough about hypnosis, which wasn't very much, to realize there might be something hypnotic going on. And I said, reach out, put out your hand, and imagine a glass plate touching it. So I did that, and then I touched him. I touched him with my finger, and I can't feel that. And then I took out my pocket knife, which the airlines later confiscated. I opened up the corkscrew, jabbed him with it. Nope, can't feel that. I said, whoa, this must be hypnosis. I don't know if it's you, I don't know if it's me, but it's worth finding out about. And immediately the thought came is, if you can think your way into an asthma exacerbation, can you think your way out of it? And that was my introduction to hypnosis.
Can you think of any other story you'd like to tell about hypnosis?
Sure, I want to tell you about this very first patient who taught me. I must have worked 50 hours with him over a year. He taught me a lot of what I know. I developed automatic word processing with him, for example. I did idiomotor signaling with him for the very first time. And I remember reading about idiomotor signaling and using with him, and he was very good at it. And I got quickly bored of asking yes and no questions. So I said, would you talk with me? Would your subconscious talk with me? And he said yes. So the next, we planned to meet again a few days later, and I was going to talk to the subconscious for the first time. I was very excited to be able to talk to the subconscious. So I prepared a list of 50 existential questions. Questions such as, what is love? What is music? Have you seen God? Have you been to heaven? All the unknowable questions. And he went into hypnosis, and the subconscious came out, and I asked him all these questions. And what was, first of all, very interesting is he didn't hesitate. He knew the answers to all these questions. And they were not 17-year-old answers. Like, he gave a very detailed, what is love question answer. And then when he came out of hypnosis, had no recollection. I asked him the same questions, and then he gave me the teenage answers. What is love? He started giggling and gave me some two-word answer. So that's when I was struck already by the dichotomy between subconscious and conscious response. I recorded that session when I talked to the subconscious because I was talking to the subconscious for the first time. It was only actually audio recording I ever did. Now I have the automatic word processing transcript, which are visual recordings. So we worked together for the year. We actually talked about what the meaning of his life was, because that was a perfect 17-year-old question. We wondered if part of his mission was to teach me about hypnosis. That was one of his roles in life. And about a year later, he died. He had ate a milk product and was brain dead. I found out about it when he was on a ventilator. And I had this audio tape of talking with his subconscious. And I felt compelled to bring it to his family. So they didn't know this tape existed. So I drove to his home an hour away, and I met the family. I told him how valuable to me my interactions with their son was, and how he enriched my life, and how my work, including what we're talking about now, is enriched by him, and I'm carrying on his work. And I said, you have to hear this tape. So we go into his room, which is where the only cassette player was in the house, and in the room is his mother and his father and his sister and her husband and a neighbor and me, and we listened to this tape. And on the tape, I asked him, have you been to heaven? And he says, well, yes, I have. What's it like? Well, I'll see my grandparents, and it's a very peaceful place. And he says, when I die, this is exactly what's going to happen. And as he says that, I still get chills telling the story. His father sits bolt upright and he says, that's it, says to the wife. What's it? You asked for a sign that he's okay. Here's a sign, his own voice telling you this is the day before the funeral, that what's happening if he dies. A little later in the tape, I asked him, are there any spirits around you? He says, the live ones or dead ones? I said, what do you mean? He says, when anybody thinks about you, their soul is with you. So I said, well, who are the live ones? And he named like 15 people, including everybody sitting in the room. Well, who are the dead ones? He named like another 20 people, including, I guess, 3 kids who died in his town and a dog he had once. I didn't know what the names were, but the family told me. So that created quite an impression because it felt like I was part of something greater than I realized. There's actually 2 more parts of this story. About half a year later, a young lady shows up. She's 12 years old. She has headaches for a year, or for half a year. And I should tell you that while I'm a pediatric pulmonologist, I'm also a pediatrician. And when I saw the power of hypnosis, I thought it was unfair to just keep it to pulmonary since nobody was doing medical hypnosis. So I opened up to general pediatrics. So we got to talking, and it turned out her headache started when her best friend died, and the friend who died was my patient. So we shared some. So the headache went away as soon as she said that, and I did some grief counseling and shared some common insights. And the last part of the story is at an ASH workshop, sometime a few months later, we were taught about affect bridges. and we were asked to pair off in pairs, and the facilitator was facilitating my hypnosis experience. The task was to imagine some patient who had a traumatic event in the past. So I imagined my patient at 7 years of age who was traumatized as a result of the first episode of anaphylaxis. And then the facilitator said, now imagine to take all the good from that experience, like your family's love, bring it forward over the bridge, but leave the bad behind. So the patient are walking across the bridge. Halfway through, this thought comes into my mind, which was, that's what I did when I died. Took the good, left the bad behind.
Thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for spending some time with me today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.